Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. A new segment that we're going to be doing exclusively for the US Open. Short videos where we go through contenders for the US Open 2022. And today we're going to be doing Stefanos Tsitsipas. So we're going to be concentrating solely on him, on his run up, on how he's been looking coming into the US Open, and also a little bit of stats. Everyone has a stat, don't they? So we're going to get into that, how he's looked at the US Open in prior years, and I'll give you my breakdown of how I think he's going to do this year as well. Before we get into it, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. If you're listening on a podcast platform, remember to follow, like, leave a rating. Thank you so much. So Stefanos Tsitsipas, the Greek player who, look, I mean, at 24 years of age, he is still very young. He's still improving, and there's a lot of positivity around how he's played going into the US Open, especially his Cincinnati result, a final on courts which play pretty similar to the US Open. So that's a massive, massive positive for him. In terms of ranking, he's actually number 5 in the world, which is fantastic for Tsitsipas, I have to say. Look, I mean, he has been higher in the past, so the only issue for him will be when the draw comes out, he won't be number 4 or higher. So that does mean his draw is going to be slightly harder when you're between 5 and 8, for example. His win-to-loss ratio, win-to-loss for the year so far is 46 and 16. So that's pretty impressive. 2 titles as well. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually holds the joint most wins on the ATP Tour in 2022 with Carlos Alcaraz, which is really impressive because, look, he's played a lot of tournaments, a lot more than, say, Nadal, who's played really well this year, but that just shows that he's winning. So he's in good form. So that's fantastic. And his record on hard courts going into the US Open is 17 and 8, which is not too bad. That's this year, of course. What I would say is in Cincinnati, which is, as I said, plays pretty similarly to the US Open nowadays, given that it's got a little bit quicker. He made the final. Last couple of years, he made a semi-finals in Cincinnati. You would think that he would have done better at the US Open in prior years. That hasn't been the case with Steph. He doesn't have the best of records at the US Open. And if I'm being honest, he actually arguably has the worst record out of all of the Grand Slams that he plays in at the US. He's definitely got the worst, best results at the US Open, if that makes sense. So he's gone further at Wimbledon, Roland Garros, and the Australian Open than he has done at the US Open. So in 2018, he was second round exit there for him, first round exit in 2019, and then 2020 and 2021 lost in a third round in both years. Last year, of course, losing to an inspired Carlos Alcaraz in what can only be described as a thrill. I did the commentary for that, and he looked so good. Carlos Alcaraz, that is, in that Tsitsipas played his part as well. Alcaraz winning 6-3, 4-6, 7-6, 0, love 6 or 0-6. I mean, crazy to get bagel and still win, but anyway, and 7-6 in a 5-set thriller. But he had beaten Manarino and Andy Murray, which was a 5-set victory in the opening round. So, look, he's playing really well, and he's won 4 out of his 7 ATP titles on hard court. So to list them: 2018 Stockholm, 2019 Marseille, 2019 ATP Finals, which is where he also beat Medvedev as well, and a couple of fantastic players. Indoor hard, yes, but still very, very notable. And 2020 Marseille. He's yet to win, obviously, then a hard court title since 2020. So a little bit of question marks around his ability to win titles on the hard courts, but his results are there in terms of going deep in some of these tournaments. And he'll be a little bit disappointed to lose to Coric the way he did in straight sets, but I think probably mentally and physically tired going into that as well to a degree. And he had what, in my eyes, is a very important victory over Daniel Medvedev. Medvedev is the US Open champion, and Steph went into that with a losing record of 7-2. He managed to gain back, at least try and close the gap even in that head-to-head. And what was even more impressive is that he had a hardcore record, I think, of 5-1 going into that. So against Medvedev, that is. So that one victory coming indoors as well. So 5 of those victories that Medvedev had, all outdoor hard courts. Tsitsipas yet to break the mold, but he did so against Medvedev. And there's some massive positives about his style and how he's been playing. So let's get into that. As we've talked about the stats, of course, he's 5-4 at the US Open. You can do the math. So let's get into it. What has been Tsitsipas's form been like? Or what has Tsitsipas's form been like going into the US Open? How do you play, for example, against Medvedev? What can we expect from Tsitsipas at the US Open? Well, there's a few things you can expect. You can expect, of course, the headband and the long locks, and what seems like it's going to be a very colourful outfit. You also have his father in the box. On-court coaching is now allowed, so that's going to be interesting. And he was one of the advocates for on-court coaching. He is very happy that it's there because, Patrick Mouratoglou, his coach at the time, was saying that, look, we really want it to happen, and Tsitsipas agreed. So he's got Mark Philippoussis in his corner, who's an ex-player, very, very successful, of course, ex-player as well, Mark Philippoussis. He seems to be doing some good things with Tsitsipas, which we'll get into in a second. But himself and his dad will be able to talk to him when on the same side of the court. So I wonder whether that mentally will give him a little bit of an edge, thinking, I've got something that actually I've wanted for a long time that might help him. And maybe it's a placebo effect, but either way, it'll be helpful. Style-wise, if you haven't seen a lot of Tsitsipas, or you're someone who maybe hasn't seen him recently, you can expect a pretty big game, an aggressive and pleasing on the eye style. Big server, someone who can hit his spots well, and has actually now started to come to the net, not just periodically when the ball's short and he hits a good approach shot, but actually serving and volleying as well. We saw against Medvedev some really, really good points, even against Coric at times as well. And he's someone who is a very natural volleyer, someone who's natural in the forecourt for sure. That's a massive, massive plus, something that gives you a different look, something in your tool bag that you can utilize. And I think the variety of his game is continually improving, and that's what's great to see about Tsitsipas. He is hungry even to improve. So serve and volleying, definitely something that you can see. But the biggest thing I think is the 1-2 punch, and that's what I like to call one of the most elite serve 1+ shot combinations in the game, and that's his serve and forehand combo. His serve, as I said, is very potent. He will get a lot of free points on it, unreturnables or aces. He's not serving 140 mile per hour plus, but he will serve consistently 120s or even 110s. But if they're 110s, they're in the corners, and he'll come forward and volley and finish off the point and close off even, and close up the court and make it very tough for a returner, as we saw against Medvedev. One of the best returners on tour, Medvedev, struggled with the Tsitsipas serve, and Tsitsipas volleying really well at times, not just behind the serve, but in a lot of the points as well. Very intelligent Stefanos Tsitsipas for sure. The forehand is definitely a weapon as well. Dictates with it beautifully, something that I think is very common and we've seen, and it's definitely become a large part, I think, of his game, and something that we now attribute to him is his ability to find angles, especially on the forehand side, cross court. And he finds these fantastic angles utilizing heavy topspin. He does so on the clay, and he manages to do it on the hard courts too. He gets a lot of success with that forehand. It's one of the best forehands on tour, if we're being honest. And it's a forehand that he can flatten out. He can hit with higher topspin. He has a lot of control with it for the most part. And he can also defend very well to the forehand side. He is one of the best players at running around his backhand. His movement around to his forehand, into out forehand, is pretty sublime for the most part. And he's also very good then at being able to defend with the forehand slice on the forehand wing. So something to look out for in terms of playing style. Backhand wise, there's been a lot of question marks around that, about how he's going to set up with his backhand. Should he be going, flatter? Should he be slicing more? Should he be further back in his return position? My view on it is that it's good to see him slicing more. I don't think it's the most effective slice on tour. It can definitely be improved still. But in saying that, it's functional for now. I think it's functional. I think it's something that he can utilize, and I don't necessarily think it's a disadvantage or something that may get punished, although Chorich did punish it at times. But it is something that is also not necessarily advantage. I think it's just something that is good to throw in as a variety. So he can struggle with his backhand grip and struggle to seamlessly switch between grips on the backhand side. So he also doesn't want to get caught in the pattern of just hitting drive backhands or slice backhands. So something for him to look at, and something that we might see at the US Open is people potentially picking up a pattern or getting the same ball a couple of times on the backhand side and then punishing him, because of it. So something for him to bear in mind. He won't be watching this, I'm sure, but if he is, then feel free to take on my advice. The other thing that he's been utilizing and has been really good is because he's been slicing more, he's disguising the drop shot well. The backhand slice drop shot doesn't have the best drop shot in the game, but it's one that is effective enough when you have a player who's standing so far back. And we saw that against Medvedev as well. So he can dictate with the forehand. He can hit a good drop shot if he sets up the point correctly. And his point construction generally is very good, always looking to come forward when he can and finish the point off of the net. So definitely a dynamic game that Steph has. And the backhand in terms of returning, which I guess I forgot to really mention, we do see a lot of shanks, not just on the backhand, but forehand at times. And that's just because of the way that he plays and the aggressive style he has and the big swings he can take. I think on the backhand side, he's been utilizing the block backhand return really well on the first serve. So he just needs to stick with that and just say, look, I'm happy to get to neutral and then get into rally because I back my ground game, rather than saying let's try and get on the upper hand. I think in those first serve return points, because more likely than not, from what we've seen, he then doesn't make the return or it's too short and he gets punished. So I think he needs to be not safe but intelligently conservative on the first serve return. Second serve return, I think he struggled to step in and hit the second serve return, which would be ideal, I guess, if you're trying to be on the front foot. So then he just needs to say, I'm going to sit back a little bit behind the baseline and again, be happy to go to neutral. And it's not ideal, but he is playing to his strengths with the other aspects of his game. And then he needs to also understand his limitations currently. And that is a limitation. He's not able to step in and take the ball on the rise, a shoulder height, coming at him quickly from a kick serve to the backhand on the outside, for example. It's something that he needs to address later on in training. But at the moment, if we're talking about the US Open and how he needs to succeed, give himself more time and then get into neutral, make sure he's positioning himself correctly after the return to then defend if he needs to, or even get on the front foot if possible on the forehand side. So a lot of good things to watch for. A lot of good things to talk about when it comes to Steph with his game. And look, he's got a very interesting personality as well, no doubt. It is definitely bubbly. It is a very thoughtful and meaningful, I think, personality, and something that is very different but refreshing at the same time. So looking forward to seeing him in New York. His results haven't been the best, as I stated, the last few years. He'll be looking to change that. He'll be looking to do something similar to what he did at the Australian Open this year. Look, I mean, he's made the semi-finals of the Australian Open 3 times, and he's made the final of Roland Garros, the semi-finals there as well. He'll be looking to do something similar to the Australian Open. There's no reason why he can't make a semi-final at the US Open like he did at the Australian Open 3 times. I have no reason to think why he couldn't do that. My prediction is very tough until the draws come out, but I would suggest he should be aiming for the quarterfinals at least. That's my bar. I mean, again, it depends on who he gets drawn, but I would imagine his goals are to win it. But for me, I think I'm looking for him to make at least the quarterfinals. Let me know your thoughts and also what you think of this player profile. We will be doing at least 1, if not 2 each day, and I'll be sifting through them. So thank you very much for watching our US Open 2022 Contenders first edition. Watch out for all the rest. We're going to do men's and women's as well, and probably about 6 or 7 for the men's, and same for the women's as well. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe.